next we're going to hear from Rick Pirozzolo, and he's the executive director of the Arnott Art Museum, and he's going to talk to us about bruises, bulls, and boundaries. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Randy. When Sarah first called me and said, let's talk about failure, I sat down and I thought, okay, what am I going to talk about? And so the first thing I did was talk to my friends and my staff. Let's, help me out here. Way to find out what people think of you. And way to see how much we fail and how much we learn from it. That list, I'm surprised I can put my one foot in front of the other after looking at that list. So, but one of the things for me, I was thinking about the personalities of the kind of people who do what we do in the not-for-profit world. And some of you know me, I'm ever so slightly self-centered. And I was thinking about our personalities. We said a half hour ago, oh, this is the obnoxious table. And it's true. And that's all the speakers, in case you were wondering. And we were, sort of talking about the kind of person that it takes to be the director of a not-for-profit or a leader in the not-for-profit world. So that's sort of where I sort of focused my thinking about my own failures and what I've learned from them. So I sort of narrowed it down to 3. The first one, I've been in the not-for-profit arts world my whole career, and I do both. I'm the chief curator at the museum, but I also do theater work. And when my first jobs in the theater, I had just started getting a little success in the theater, and it was time to go back to my hometown, which happens to be just down the road in Horseheads, and sort of give back. And I directed a high school musical, and it was what it was, those of you who are performers. And it was time to take this musical on tour. And I was coming back as, the conquering hero. I've just done a show in New York, and I'm working in the theater, and I'm just so successful, and yay for me. And so let's go on a tour, and let's take the show. And we took the show to high schools around the community. And it was time to go back to my own high school, the place where I graduated. And one of the things we did when we went on this tour was introduce the performers at each school who were from that particular school. Well, now we're getting to the last school on the tour, and it's my school, so we're going to introduce the director, and it's me, and I'm ever so slightly proud of myself. So and I'm 24, so some of you are 24, and some of you remember being 24. So it's time to introduce everybody. So we introduced the male lead, and he came out and took a bow. And okay, now it's time to introduce me. And so the MC said, and the show is directed by a former student here at Horseheads High School. It's Rick Pirozzolo. And I was in the rear of the house, so I was back there. And I was in the habit, as a slightly more in shape person than I am now, of sort of running down the aisle and jumping on the stage. 24. And so I did and this is 1,200 students at my high school and all of my teachers. And so I ran down this great long aisle and got right to the stage, and most stages in these elementary and middle schools that we were performing in are this high, and this stage was this high. And so I went running, and I lifted my foot up, and I got to that stage, and I hit this edge, and I slammed face down on the thing in front of 1,400 people. So that was sort of the first failure that I came up with. And the reason I bring it up is it's sort of public failure. Really public failure. And I sort of had to get up and dust myself off and do what I was supposed to do there. And so I guess when I thought about talking to you, I thought, well, first thing I'm going to talk about then is fail big. Take the risk, and this was I didn't think it was a risk, but I just ran down the thing and did what I was doing. But fail big. That's the lesson I learned there. So again, I'm talking about the kind of personality that it takes to do what we do. I'm not afraid now to call up Randy and say, I need $10,000. I'm not embarrassed. Many of you know me, I do a whole lot of work in front of microphones around the community. I'm not afraid to do the auction and say, we've got to raise money for the Cancer Society, or we've got to raise money for the Chamber of Commerce. What we do takes putting yourself out there, and I think one of the ways that I learned to be able to put myself out there was by bruising my face, my chest, my leg, all the way down in front of 1,400 people. So that was my first one. Second one, later in my career, and by the way, I'm not even talking in anything in my speech today about anything I do at the museum. And it's not because we don't fail there. I don't know if they're too raw or we haven't learned anything from them yet. But I'm sort of back in my earlier careers. And I see Jen Herrick's here, who's the director of Elmira Downtown Development. I held that job for 10 years. And it's another not-for-profit job where you have to sort of put yourself out there. One of the projects that I'm alternately really proud of and cover my face about is we built what's now the First Arena when I was there. And the first year that it was open, it was a great big deal, and we had a professional hockey team and two big old ice rinks, and we can do all kinds of events. We got to plan some interesting events. Let's plan a rodeo. So you can see that all these stories have inner failures that I'm not even going to talk about. But my own personal failure here was so we brought in somebody from the professional rodeo circuit and said, and they put on a program, and they said we need a celebrity to ride the bull. So, I'll just volunteer myself first of all, as a celebrity, and secondly, as somebody who could ride a bull. I was slightly smaller than I am now, but I was not a small person. And I'm worried that Sarah's going to put up the sign and I'm not even getting to my serious failure, so I got to talk fast about this. But there are so many internal failures that I'm going to skip on this, not least of which is these are serious people who do the rodeo. And I thought, well, this is not an athlete growing up or anybody who did much physical. And I'm like, with all these cool guys that can ride bulls and horses and things. So I'm all excited to be hanging around with them and using thinking I'm cool and using bad language and stuff, sort of saying the F word and things around these people. And come to find out, everybody on the circuit is fundamentalist, serious, religious people. And they were not happy with me about the way I was speaking. I thought I was, P.S. The lesson of this one is going to be do your research, because the next thing, you have to wear a Kevlar vest, because if you get gored, they want to, sort of protect you a little bit. But they're all small people. So they'd look at me and they said, get the biggest guy's vest. So they bring it out and it fits like this. It doesn't even close. It doesn't even close, and the part you're trying to protect was not covered. So they got a second vest and I had to wear it backwards, and they tied a rope around my waist. So then, the whole time, by the way, do your research. The whole time I'm thinking this is going to be the mechanical bull or some little baby moo cow that's going to do this. You go and they call for me, and you go and they have these bulls in the chute, and then they're showing me the bull, and it's seriously the size of that table, this animal. And they say, put your one leg on this side and your other leg on this side. We're going to send the bull through. The bull will only be behind the screen for 1 second, and then we'll let it go. You just hold on for dear life, and when you fall off, everyone will think it's great, and you'll move on. Some of you know how they make the bulls buck. They tie the rope around their testicles and around their chest. So the bulls are not happy. They let the bull in, and as soon as the bull's in, sit down, and it will be bucking, because it's not happy, because they let the bull in, I sat down, it sat down. Because it's never had a rider as heavy as I am. So they prodded the bull, they finally did the thing, kaboom, they opened the thing, I was on for 1.8 seconds, and I flew. And just an afterthought to that story, I've already told you, I didn't do a whole lot athletic growing up or physical. those of you who do, I understand that thing from that one experience in my life about the adrenaline rush, the sort of what happens to you. For 48 hours after that, I was like Superman. But anyway, lesson there, fail big and do your research. Find out what you're getting yourself into. Serious story, are you getting your thing out already? Serious story. Mark Twain the Musical was a project that I did here in Elmira where we did and Mariana was a performer in the show. It was amongst the largest performing companies in the United States. They were, we had the first performers from behind the Soviet Union as permanent members of our company. We performed here for 9 years. We moved the show to Connecticut for a year. I can't believe I'm shortchanging this story, the serious one. My job, I was brought in as creative director in Connecticut, which meant, as all of you at that table know, raise the money. We raised $10 million to do that show, and we put the show on. I wish I could tell you more about it, but her and that sheet. One thing I'll tell you, you might know Connie Britton, who's on Friday Night Lights and who's now is on Nashville. Her first professional job was here in Elmira doing Mark Twain the Musical. We raised $10 million. $1.6 million of that was from the governor's office in the state of Connecticut. The governor loved the show. He would come once a week with the VIPs. They would come and see the show. We had 3,000 seats in Connecticut. We were selling consistently 2,400 seats for 8 shows a week. That is unheard of. It doesn't happen on Broadway. It doesn't happen anywhere. But we're $1.6 million short to go to the next year's production. I go and sit with the governor who loved us, and yes, you're all set, you're fine, you are this $1.6 million. In order to make our budget work, I needed to not be paying the senior staff. So we all took sabbaticals from October to December. January 3rd, I'm set to go back to Connecticut and begin the production on the next year's show. Christmas Day, I'm at brunch with my friends, and I said, I'll cut the cantaloupe. So, I'm going to make a mess here. Oh, just give me the paper. Some of you used to work for the paper. I'll use the newspaper as my drop cloth. We had all read it, I promise. And I'll use the newspaper as my drop cloth. I guess I hadn't read it because I opened it up and I got the cantaloupe out and I started to cut it and I read the headline, Connecticut Governor Cuts Funding for Musical. No one told me, we found out, they made a press release to the local newspapers in Elmira and Hartford on Christmas Eve at 8 o'clock at night. So I found out on Christmas morning. So the story there, have a plan, fail big, do your research, and don't trust the government. My real answer there, though, is seriously have a plan B. We had that group of Russian performers who were already fully visaed as performers of extraordinary quality, which was the only way we could get them into the United States, and they were ready to come April 1st. We were in trouble. We didn't have a plan B. We eventually connected them with 4 ballet companies in the United States, and every member of that company was able to come to the United States as professional performers, and every one of them now is a citizen of the United States and is performing. That's where I learned to have a plan B. We had to save 24 adults' livelihood because of something that I didn't plan forward for. So, a little different, I was thinking, a little different than the institutional failures. Like I said, I think we have them at the museum. I'm almost certain we do. But I think they're too close to my memory, and I haven't learned much from them yet. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit, like I said today, about the kind of people that it takes to run institutions like ours. People who take big risks, and people who are very, very seldom embarrassed. And you learn that on the stage. So, can I answer any questions, or is this going to be a day of no questions? Somebody did? Wow, we're all in the process. Thank you.